After watching one of Mark Rober's latest videos on car theft, I became slightly paranoid about people stealing my car. It also reminded me that I have this metallic fabric in my fabric stash, which I bought many years ago but never used. It feels stiff and papery, not great for clothing, but it's supposed to be used to block electromagnetic frequencies, like the electromagnetic frequencies from your car key fob that thieves can exploit to steal your car. I tested to see how well it blocked the signals from my car keys. I was doing this with one hand because I was holding my camera at the same time, but when I was able to create a seal, one layer of fabric seemed to stop the keys from unlocking the car. Sometimes. So I went about designing a pouch that could fit my car keys. I used Seamly 2D for this. I had never used this software before, so it took a bit of getting used to, and in the end I wasn't really sure if I'd used it the way it was intended to be used, but I got a pattern. It's a really simple pattern. I probably didn't really need to use any software, but it's good practice before trying to make something bigger and more complicated with it. I'll also be using this red fabric, which was an old red shirt of mine that I strongly disliked because it was red. But the fabric feels nice, so I cut it up into sections to use for things like this. Things I will never wear. I cut out the pattern. I know some of you will be screaming at me through your screens for using fabric scissors to cut paper. Scissors go missing so often in my house. The fabric scissors are the only ones that don't go missing. Plus, you can sharpen them pretty easily. And then I found the regular scissors. I hope some of you feel better now. I used them to cut off the seam allowance, because I decided I'd figure that out later. Then I got to marking out the pattern onto the fabric. I recently got this handy little pen, which temporarily marks fabric. Turns out it fades almost immediately when applied to metallic fabric. I think this may be because the metal is catalyzing the oxidative breakdown of the ink. The pen definitely works. It marks the red fabric just fine. But I had to use chalk instead. I pinned it and sewed across the top. And I cut around it like so. Now to turn it inside out. I was supposed to just sew along the long edge, but my brain wasn't working, and I sewed all the open edges shut. I blame the stiflingly hot weather. This gave the pouch a really odd shape, which you'll just have to imagine because I don't show it on camera. I just tried to fix it as soon as possible. I did this by cutting the bottom edge open and folding it correctly before sewing it shut. This is how it's supposed to be sewn. Turn it right side out, and this is what it looks like. Now to test it. It did not work. I think it was because of the seams. There wasn't a continuous sheet of metal fabric enclosing the key fob. The red fabric was separating it. So I would have to do the seams differently. I made another one. This time, when doing the long seam, I cut my seam allowance, but left a flap of the metallic fabric on one side. This was folded and flipped over the seam. This way, there would be no gap between the metal fabric. You could make this even prettier by doing a flat felled seam, but I can't do this on my machine with this specific pattern. Here's what it looked like. I did the same for the bottom. Here's what the finished pouch looked like. It looked exactly like the first one, from the outside. But did these new seams actually help? Yes, they did. It worked. But sometimes it didn't. The top was the biggest leak, so it needed to be clamped shut or folded over. I decided to make something that I felt would work more reliably. I went back to Seamly 2D and modified the pattern. I'm still getting used to the software. I suppose I could have just eyeballed it without a new pattern, but I didn't, even though all I did was extend the length by 2 centimeters. I doubled the metallic fabric. Hopefully, 2 layers would work even better. Making the pouch longer meant that when it was buttoned shut, the top could fold over on itself, giving a better seal. Here it is. It doesn't have a button yet, but at least I can still test it. Nothing is getting through. It appears to be a success. So simply folding the top flap over leaves a bit of a gap, which could allow some of those electromagnetic frequencies to leak through. Folding it over like this helps to stop that. In summary, if you're planning on making something to block out electromagnetic frequencies, your seams and the thickness of your material will be very important. Also, not all of these conductive fabrics are created equally, so it's a good idea to test them out yourself and experiment with your patterns. Last of all, here it is with a button.